Boards of Focus Communications, and today we're getting another update from Eloro Resources, which trades on the TSX exchange under the symbol ELO. And joining me today is Eloro Executive VP of Exploration, Dr. Bill Pearson, and Senior Strategic Metallurgist, Mike Hallewell. Gentlemen, thanks for your time today.
Our pleasure. Good to see you.
It's a pleasure.
So, Bill, for those who are new to the Eloro Resources story, could you give us a brief introduction to the company and your Iska Iska project in Bolivia?
Sure, absolutely. Iska Iska is really quite a remarkable discovery in southern Bolivia. You know, we've started working on this back in September 2020. This deposit has continually grown drill hole by drill hole. We've done about 139 holes so far, over 100,000 meters of drilling. We haven't missed in one single hole, and the system is just remarkably huge. We're down here in the southern end of this famous Bolivian tin belt. Bolivia is well known for these tin polymetallic deposits. Iska Iska is really a classic example, but it's a little bit different than most of the other ones because it has a heavy oxidized belt on it, which is the reason why this thing was never found 500 years ago. This is a nice picture of our caldera. We're in a major caldera complex. You can see it's a very high altitude here, around 4,000 plus meters. Lovely place to work. It's kind of like working in Arizona or Nevada, except at a much higher elevation. And we started off over in this Wawakaza area, and then we expanded out, drilling big discovery with the Santa Barbara breccia pipe. And we've basically taken this deposit and shown that it goes right across this whole valley. We've got some very interesting targets down here in Porco. And this is a simplified geology map. So what you have here is an earlier high temperature tin system, and then a later epithermal polymetallic silver, zinc, and lead. And it's in this huge volcanic edifice that it's about a kilometer from the valley to the peak. And you can see all this green here. These are a series of dacitic domes. There's huge breccia pipes and this big porphyry in the middle. And you can see our red dotted line here. That's our high-grade zone, 90 grams silver equivalent. And the scale of this thing is quite remarkable. Our high-grade zone now is about 1,200 meters by 800 by 1,100. Still open in all directions. But this whole thing occurs within an even larger system. You can see this low area in the middle of this big magnetic anomaly here. Well, the entire system is actually about 5 by 3 kilometers. And we have just scratched the surface really in terms of how much potential to expand it. So it's a remarkable system anyway you look at it. If you look closer, we've done quite a lot of drilling through here, which is what the resource will be based on. And if you see some of our results, we've had some remarkable results up intersections 200, 300, 400 meters long, wonderfully consistent. We have 4 major key metals here: silver, tin, zinc, and lead. You can see that we have some holes are much higher in silver, DHK 27, for example, almost 70 grams silver per ton. We have other holes like DSBU 3, which is high in tin, and we have ones like DHK 18 that has several percent zinc. So, and this is very, very consistent throughout there. But as I'll show you later, there's certainly a major zoning here. With the other thing that's been quite remarkable, if you followed our story, is this just shows a model of the high-grade zone done in Leapfrog. And you can see from July 22, when it was sort of relatively small, we keep drilling and drilling to what we have this spring. We've consistently expanded it. and those are the current dimensions. You'll see this brown here. This is the magnetic, inverse magnetic model, 3D model. This is what we believe is a potential tin porphyry at depth. We've caught parts of this in the upper parts, and this is a big exploration story going forward. In our most recent release, we've been working with Mike quite intensely on figuring out how best to optimize the metallurgy. There's a strong connection between geology and metallurgy. Mike needs to know what is he going to get at the plant, and of course my job is to figure out what am I going to deliver and what's in it. So what we found is that there's really, Iska Iska is kind of like two deposits in one. We have the red, which is predominantly tin with some silver over on the western side, and on the eastern side in the green is this polymetallic silver, zinc, and lead. There's some overlap here, but again, you can see when you look at it in section, there's certainly a couple of discrete zones, and Mike will explain why that's important process-wise. So the big thing that I really want to leave the investors with is this is an incredible system. It's huge. We haven't missed on one drill hole, which is acceptable. I've been in this game for 50 years, and even in projects like Jacobina, which was a big success story, I had some blank holes. We still haven't drilled one here. And it's not that we're necessarily brilliant. It means that this system is incredibly intense and wide mineralization, and it clearly has the potential to be an extremely long-lived mine down the road.
So, Bill, it has been a busy 3 years for Eloro, from your first underground drilling campaign to your upcoming maiden resource estimate at Iska Iska. Now, before we discuss some of your recent metallurgy results, can you walk us through some of your drilling to date, and most notably the Santa Barbara target, which has been a significant focus for the company?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me just flip back to here and just say a little bit more about these numbers. When you look at the assays in these holes, like DSB 30 up in the top here, 441 meters, that's 4.5 football fields. So if you mentally think about and you say, holy mackerel, this is big. So the consistency of the mineralization, the wide spread nature of it, and of course, as I mentioned, the fact that you're in a big system, that's always been my rule of thumb exploration-wise. If you want to find it, a big deposit, get in the big system. This is by far the biggest system I've ever had the pleasure of working on in my career. But the important thing is it's still open along strike and at depth and across. The other thing that's important for people to realize is that when we look at this model and how it's evolved here, we're still looking at very, very wide space drilling. Most of our drilling is 100-meter spacing for much of the deposit. Now, if you think about that, if I'm hitting on every hole in this huge system, what is that telling you? It's telling you that the background in this system is very, very extensive, and wherever I drill a hole, I'm going to hit it. But what kicks the grade up in our higher grade holes, where you're getting numbers north of 100 grams silver equivalent per ton, is when you hit these veins and vein breccias. And these are not uniformly distributed around, so there's a statistical bias when you're drilling of whether you hit them or not. And certainly my gut feeling geologically is as we fill this in, we'll see much better definition of these higher grade zones, which we know are absolutely there, and you'll see the overall grade and extent of this deposit will increase. And as Mike will outline, these high grade parts where the bulk of the mineralization sits are very important, and is a big reason why the ore sorter works. Metallurgy and geology are very, very strongly linked. And, you know, what we see on the geological end, Mike is now bringing over and making a reality on the process end. And the other thing I want to mention too is we do have a geologic AI scanner on site. Phenomenal piece of equipment. You might have seen a video that Agnico did recently on their core scanning, their geologic AI's largest customer. We've been doing a huge amount of work in calibrating the mineralogy so that we can use the AI to map out these geomet zones so that Mike can more efficiently figure out how to optimize future plant feed. So that doesn't really show up in your press releases, but the technical level of this project is the highest I've ever had the privilege to work with. And we, of course, have a tremendous team in Bolivia led by Dr. Osvaldo Arce, who's an absolute expert on Bolivian metallic mineral deposits. So I would describe us as being like when you see the duck out in the pond and it's very calm, but our feet are pedaling like crazy underneath. We've done an enormous amount of work over the last 3 or 4 months. You know, you wouldn't, that's something that I want to really emphasize to the investors watching this. We've done an enormous amount of work, and all of this is feeding in to showing the world that this is a tremendous, not only a tremendous deposit, but it's got a tremendous future as a potential mine down the road.
So, Mike, let's talk to you for a minute. Recently, Eloro reported major advances in metallurgy for the Iska Iska project. Seeing as you are an essential part of strategic metallurgy for Eloro, walk us through the importance of this process and provide us with the key takeaways.
Sure, thanks. As soon as I got involved with the project, it became clear to me that the project, as Bill has alluded to, is an extremely large tonnage project. And so the very first thing that I had considered was pre-concentration. It's kind of a no-brainer because with such high tonnages, power prices going up, consumable prices going up in the world, nobody wants to mill waste. And so very first on for me was, does this ore pre-concentrate? And when I say ore, I mean the two ores, the lead, zinc, silver, polymetallic, and the tin. So we sent some samples via the scanner. We've scanned the samples, and we sent them away for metallurgical test work in Tomber in Germany. And pleased to say that the images and assays all indicate that the ore is amenable to XRT ore sorting. And the sort of level, just to put a context on this, the sort of level that we're able to reject on the polymetallic at this early stage is around 40%. And on the tin side was much higher because of its inherent lower grade. About 80% of that material can be rejected at sub-cutoff grade, waste grade. So this means that we're not having to process all that ore through the downstream, more expensive flow sheet, which is a great benefit to the overall economics. And of course, it increases the grade of the material that feeds the mill, which makes it more amenable to getting higher recoveries downstream. So this was probably the biggest single metallurgical benefit or news flow that puts the whole project into a new financial space because we're not milling all that waste. So that was the first thing, and then the second thing was the ore is relatively fine grained. There is some coarse cassiterite there on the cassiterite side. I'm talking now, and as a consequence of that, we wanted to use the latest multi-gravity separation techniques. And those techniques are in use all over the world, Renison Bell, Mincer, all over the world. I used to use it when I was running the operation at Wheelchain in Cornwall. And they've come on in leaps and bounds. So we're using that multi-gravity technique to pin down all the fine particles and increase the recovery in the concentrator. And we've had some really good positive increases in recovery using those techniques. So that's the second piece of news. Then the third piece is really that because the material is lower grade and tends to be part of the ore is complexly locked, we're able to recover a lower grade concentrate. So instead of aiming for a 60% concentrate grade initially from the plant, we'd be aiming at a 5% concentrate grade and sending that through a fuming process, which is a standard process used across the world to upgrade pyrometallurgically the 5% tin concentrate into a 60-70% fume product, which then can be smelted. And you get 90 to 95% recovery in that stage. So that was an obvious thing to do, and it helped us no end in being able to target a lower grade concentrate grade. So those three things, I think, are essentially the three news flows that have made the project quite exciting on the metallurgical side, because it provides us with a much more cost-effective way of processing this large tonnage, lower grade deposit.
And Mike, in the release, you mentioned the additional metallurgical findings will allow the company to move rapidly towards a PEA. Can you expand on this and discuss any next steps as you reach that next milestone?
Sure. I mean, the next step from us post MRE will be a PEA study, and the PEA study will be based on drilling PQ holes into the deposit. We'll take bulk samples and send them for ore sorting. That data, the resultant products from ore sorting will then be used as the test work feed for the lead zinc silver polymetallic flotation flow sheet and the tin flotation flow sheet, which we've already devised. So it's quite extraordinary the amount of work that we've done already in the MRE. It's unusual, but we felt it justified because it's a relatively unique deposit, and so we wanted to do up and above the normal amount of metallurgy to demonstrably convince ourselves and everyone else, of course, that we are able to we've got a recovery route for this material. So that will be further bolstered by a PEA study later in the year on PQ core. The key part of that, the milestone, will be the shape of the pre-concentration plant. Whether we use XRT ore sorting, I think, is a given, but we've also found that dense media separation, another pre-concentration technique that's used all over the world, works as well. And that's really good news as well for us, because that could be used in parallel or in conjunction with the XRT ore sorting system and further strengthen the amount of ore that we pre-concentrate. So that's the key for us now, is getting into that next phase of testing to further strengthen the flow sheet and numbers.
Okay. And Bill, the planned view map of Iska Iska in your latest press release really shows the significance of tin at Santa Barbara. The release also mentions that the target area is essentially two major deposits in one. So can you break this down for us?
Yeah, definitely. Let me go back to that zoning slide here. This has a very strong geological reason why there happens to be two deposits in one, essentially, because you've got two major stages of mineralization here. And this is very, very typical of the Bolivian polymetallic type. If you look at Dr. Arce's landmark book on metalliferous deposits of Bolivia, this is not a unique type. It's in fact quite widely known in Bolivia. What's unique about Iska Iska is the size and the level of preservation. So things like breccia pipes, this is the first major breccia pipe ever found in Bolivia. You know, there's lots of them that host mineral deposits in Mexico and Chile and so forth. But in Bolivia, it's very, very unique. And when we first went into it, I remember Osvaldo saying, wow, I haven't seen this anywhere else in Bolivia. So what you have here is a system where the tin has formed early. Tin is a high temperature mineralogy. It forms around 400 or 500 degrees centigrade, deeper in the Earth's crust. So that's the initial phase that came in as part of the first phase of building up this huge stratovolcano. Iska Iska was a super volcano back in the Miocene, 14 or so million years ago. So that was your first stage. And then what happened with any stratovolcano is you build it up, and eventually that magma chamber is depleted, and you have complete structural a structural void down there. So the whole structure becomes unstable and it collapses. And that's what forms the classic circular caldera. But then what happens is your whole subduction process that is driving this volcanism is still going on. So what happens is the pressure builds up again, the magma chamber fills up, and you have another series of eruptions that come up that form all these dacitic domes, form breccia pipes, and has this extensive high sulfidation polymetallic mineralization with silver, lead, and zinc. And so that is superimposed on the pre-existing tin mineralization. And that's why you end up with basically two discrete deposits. And you're right here, if you look at the size of this thing, it's huge. You know, it's about 1,200 meters long, 800 meters wide. Our deepest holes are down about 1,100 meters, still mineralized. So, but of course, what we know geologically is important to convey to Mike on the metallurgy side, because he needs to know what kind of feed is coming into his plant. Obviously, how you're going to process a potential tin ore versus polymetallic is going to be a different process. And when you're mining it, you need to be able to sort these things out. And that's why we've put a lot of work in to figuring out, getting a handle on this. And of course, we're taking it to another level with our core scanner. I'm working with Geologic AI to use their artificial intelligence to map out geometallurgical zones. We've done an enormous amount of work calibrating the minerals in the deposit. And we have a very, very good model now. So all of this will feed into generating a far better geologic and mining model, which Mike will be able to take and figure out how to optimize not only the process, but especially the future feed through this plant. So, you know, you've talked to me on a number of occasions, and you can see how we've been working away diligently, and oftentimes investors don't necessarily see that, but our level of understanding on this deposit is continuing to go up and up, and that benefits absolutely is crucial and benefits the downstream potential production.
So let's talk about next steps. Bill, you'll have the MRE as the immediate catalyst, but what can we expect from the company beyond as next steps?
Well, next step, as Mike mentioned, and it's outlined in our supplementary prospectus that we just filed and closed a smaller financing on just yesterday, actually. As Mike mentioned, we'll be doing some PQ, which are large size core, for further metallurgical testing at Tomra, which will confirm and refine the applicability of the ore sorting. We have no doubt that it'll work, but obviously that work is necessary. We'll be doing some targeted drilling to really go after some of the shallower, higher grade areas that are not that well defined, and obviously having shallower areas that are high grade and can be mined earlier in the mining cycle have a major impact on potential payback. So that's an important aspect. We have been doing some drilling, exploration drilling down in Considerita. We'll be putting those results out quite soon. And we'll still be doing a little bit of geophysical work on Iska Iska. We're going to do a gravity survey because we think that might be able to pick up the tin porphyry at depth, and we'll be doing some work on our outlying properties. But the big item will be moving forward, as Mike mentioned, on a PEA, and the work we've done in the metallurgical end has really accelerated our ability to get to a PEA, in quite rapid fashion. So there's going to be lots happening over the coming months. I know we've been a little bit quiet lately, but we've certainly been working very hard, and I think investors will see the fruits of that labor in the coming weeks and months.
And before we part ways, is there anything else you'd like to highlight for our viewers?
Well, just great to have another update with you, and everyone stay tuned. It's an exciting time for Eloro. Iska Iska is an absolutely incredible deposit. I've been in this business for 50 years. I've never seen anything like it. And stay tuned.
All right. Well, sounds great. Thanks again for your time today, gentlemen, and we look forward to discovering what's next for Eloro as the company continues to hit milestones.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Thanks a lot.
Very much.